The marble floors of the Thorne estate always felt like ice, even in the height of summer. At 6 months pregnant, every step felt heavy. A rhythmic thud that echoed through the hollow, high-ceilinged hallways of the mansion I called home, but never felt like mine. I was Elena Vance, the lucky girl who had married the sun around which the town orbited. Harrison Thorne. I clutched a small sonogram photo in my hand. I had just come from the doctor. The image was grainy, but to me it was the most beautiful thing in the world. I wanted to believe that this life growing inside me would finally melt the frost in Harrison's heart. As I approached the heavy oak doors of his private study, I heard a sound that made me freeze. It wasn't the sound of stock market reports or business negotiations. It was a laugh, sharp, melodic and practiced. Sienna Blake, my stepsister, the darling of the silver screen and the woman who had spent her life trying to steal every bit of light I ever managed to find. My dear father, Mr. Blake married another woman after the death of her first wife, my mother. One night he brought home a stepmother for me, while I was waiting for him to bring me my favourite croissant. I never had them ever again. The fact that she was not alone, but accompanied by her 7-year-old daughter, Sienna. Dad, I want this room. It's so spacious and cosy. Sienna ordered my dad, while point at my room. Okay, honey, whatever please you. To my shock, I heard Dad saying it. But that's my room, I tried to interrupt. How could he just give my room to her? I have decorated it according to my taste. I had accumulated so many memories in this room with my late mother. Dad came forward and held my hand. Come with me. I will give you another room. He dragged me out of that room. I turned back to see a victorious smile on her face. I cried my way out of the room all the way down to the servant quarter. Here's your new room. Don't make a noise. You belong here from now on, Dad ordered me. After that night, my life was never the same. I had cooked food for this mother-daughter. I washed their clothes and polished her school boots, and carried her bag to the bus. I should have knocked. I should have walked away, but something in the tone of their voices, a conspiratorial skin-crawl of a tone, made me stop. I leaned closer to the door, my heart hammering against my ribs. He's getting restless, Harrison, Sienna purred. I could practically hear the pout in her voice. Every time I see her waddling around this house, it reminds me of how much time we're wasting, how much money we're wasting. It's a means to an end. Sienna, Harrison's voice came through, cold and clinical. There was no love in it, not even for the child I was carrying. The public loves a family man. My investors want stability. A pregnant wife is the ultimate shield. But she's so drab, Sienna hissed. A billionaire industrialist needs a queen, not a charity case. And what about the brat? A baby born from the womb of a poor, pathetic girl like Elena? He'll be a curse on your reputation. A peasant in a designer cradle remains a peasant. I felt a sharp pain in my abdomen, as if the words had physically struck me. I placed a hand over my stomach, feeling a tiny, defiant kick. Harrison laughed a dry, hollow sound. Don't worry. Once the merger is finalised and the land deeds are secured, I'll handle the baggage. A child from her won't bring any good luck to the Thorne name. I'll settle her in some remote town. Give her enough to keep her quiet and we can move on. She's served her purpose. The sonogram photo crumpled in my grip. My eyes blurred with tears, but they weren't tears of sadness. They were the first sparks of a fire. Hearing those words shattered the remaining hope in me. I had survived the bad behaviour of my stepmother and Sienna, but when I met Harrison for the first time, a hope flickered in me. He loved me, cared for me, or at least showed me so. I instantly fell in love with him. I knew as a matter of fact that my life is incomplete without him. I needed him in my life. I had been playing the role of the grateful, quiet wife for 3 years. I had let them treat me like a shadow in my own home because I thought love required sacrifice. But as I stood there, listening to the man I loved discuss my child like a faulty piece of machinery, I realised I wasn't just a wife, I was a witness to a crime. I pulled back from the door, my breath hitching in my throat. I didn't burst in. I didn't scream. If I confronted them now, I would lose. I had no money of my own, no power, and a family that had already traded me to the highest bidder. A peasant in a designer cradle she had called my son. You have no idea, I whispered to the empty hallway, my voice trembling but certain. You have no idea what this peasant is going to do to your empire. I turned away from the door, my mind already racing. I had 3 months until this baby was born. 3 months to find a way out. But Harrison was faster than I thought. He didn't just want me gone. He wanted me destroyed. And the birthday gala for Sienna was only 2 days away. The 2 days leading up to the gala were a blur of calculated silence. I moved through the mansion like a ghost, watching Harrison and Sienna exchange lingering glances behind my back. Every time Harrison touched my shoulder or asked how I was feeling, I felt a wave of nausea that had nothing to do with my pregnancy. He wasn't checking on me. He was checking his shield. Sienna's 25th birthday bash was billed as the event of the century. The theme was the gilded masquerade. Harrison had insisted I wear a dress of heavy, charcoal grey wool, high-collared and drab. "It's elegant, Elena," he'd said, not looking me in the eye. "It shows modesty. You're representing the Thorne motherly image." In reality, he wanted me to look like a shadow next to Sienna. And she was a flame. She stood in the centre of the ballroom in a gown made of literal gold thread, her face half hidden by a mask of filigreed lace. The event was a reflection of luxury, class and standards. A magnificent display of money. I stood by the buffet, my back aching, watching the elite of the city fawn over the woman who was systematically dismantling my life. "Ladies and gentlemen," Harrison's voice boomed, silencing the string quartet. He stepped onto the grand staircase, pulling Sienna up beside him. To celebrate the woman who inspires the screen and the hearts of millions, I have a small token of my sheer appreciation. I watched Sienna's face on the television screens for years, knowing the truth behind the talent the world adored. She didn't get into the media through hard work or a gift for the craft. She climbed there using my life as her ladder. When we were younger, I was the one who spent hours writing stories and pouring my soul into journals, while she spent her time practicing my expressions in the mirror. She didn't have a creative bone in her body, so she stole mine. She took my private notebooks to her first auditions, performing my deepest heartaches as if they were her own, winning over casting directors with empathy she had never actually felt. Once she set her sights on Harrison, she used him as her personal studio head. She manipulated his ego, convincing him that a man of his stature deserved a star by his side, not a quiet girl like me. He used his industrial fortune to buy her way into the headlines, paying for the glowing reviews in the magazine covers that plastered her face across every newsstand. I had to sit in the shadows and watch her win awards using the very words she'd ripped from my diary, while Harrison funded the PR, machines that painted her as a saint, and me as the jealous, unstable sister. She didn't become an actress because she could act. She became one because she was a world-class thief who had a billionaire, willing to finance her lies. He pulled a velvet box from his pocket. Inside sat the Blue Empress. Even in the dim light, the sapphire pulsed with a deep oceanic blue, surrounded by a halo of white diamonds. The crowd gasped. It was a piece of history. It was worth more than the town I grew up in. Harrison clipped it around Sienna's neck. She leaned in, whispering something in his ear that made him smirk. My stomach twisted. That necklace was supposed to be a family heirloom, promised to me when our child was born. "Thank you, Harrison," Sienna projected her voice to the room. "It's perfect. It makes me feel safe." The party roared back to life. An hour later, as I retreated to a quiet alcove to rest my swollen feet, the music suddenly cut out. A scream pierced the chatter. "It's gone! It's gone!" I looked up to see Sienna at the top of the stairs, clutching her bare throat. Her gold mask was off, her face a mask of practiced horror. The Blue Empress! Someone took it. Harrison was there in a second, his face a mask of thunder. "Nobody leaves. Security, lock the doors." The room descended into a frantic whisper. I stood up, my hand on my belly, feeling a sudden cold dread. I saw the way Sienna's eyes locked onto mine. She wasn't crying. She was hunting. "I saw someone," Sienna whimpered, pointing a trembling finger toward me. "I saw Elena near my dressing room earlier. She said it should have been hers. That it wasn't fair." "Elena?" Harrison walked toward me, his footsteps heavy. The crowd parted like the Red Sea. "Is this true?" "I haven't been near her dressing room, Harrison," I said, my voice remarkably steady despite the pounding in my ears. "I've been here all night." "Search her," Harrison commanded. "Harrison, I'm your wife," I whispered, the humiliation hot in my throat. "Don't do this." If you have nothing to hide, you have nothing to fear, he snapped. A female security guard stepped forward. She reached for the oversized maternity bag I carried for my vitamins and water. She unzipped the side pocket and reached deep inside. The room went silent as she pulled out a flash of brilliant cold blue. The blue empress dangled from her fingers, the diamonds catching the light like shards of ice. A collective gasp of disgust rippled through the guests. I didn't put that there, I said, looking directly at Sienna. She gave me the tiniest, most feline smile. Harrison didn't ask for an explanation. He didn't even look surprised. He took the necklace from the guard and looked at me with a disgust so profound. It felt like a physical blow. "A thief," he said, loud enough for every investor and journalist to hear. "I took you out of the gutter. Elena, I gave you my name, my home, and a life you didn't deserve. And you repay me by stealing from your own sister? Harrison, please listen to me." "I'm done listening," he roared. He grabbed my arm, his fingers digging into my skin, and dragged me toward the grand entrance. He threw the heavy doors open to the night. A torrential rain was blurring the world outside. "You want to be a peasant? Go back to the mud," he hissed, leaning close so only I could hear. "The bad luck baby stays with you. I don't want a thief's brat in my house. Consider yourself divorced. My lawyers will send the papers to whatever bridge you're sleeping under tonight." He shoved me. I stumbled, my heels skidding on the wet marble of the driveway. I fell to my knees in the dirt, the rain soaking through my grey wool dress in seconds. The heavy oak doors slammed shut. The music inside resumed, muffled and mocking. I sat in the mud, clutching my stomach, the freezing rain washing the last of my naivety away. My family, my husband, my life are all gone in the span of a heartbeat. Once again, Sienna took everything from me. And my husband, did he forget that it was me whom he cheated on? He should be the one ashamed of his actions. Instead, he put the blame on me. I looked up at the glowing windows of the Thorne mansion. My heart, once shattered, began to harden into something sharper. Something lethal. "You made a mistake, Harrison," I whispered into the storm. "You should have made sure I couldn't get back up." The rain didn't just wash away my makeup. It washed away Elena Thorne. By the time I reached the bus station 3 miles away, shivering and soaked to the bone, I was Eleanor Vance again. Just a girl with no money, a heavy belly, and a name that carried the weight of a scandal. I spent my first night on a plastic chair, clutching my maternity bag, the very bag they had used to frame me. I reached into the bottom of it, past the prenatal vitamins, and found a small, crumpled envelope I'd tucked away weeks ago. It was a letter from my late mother, something I'd been too sentimental to open. I tore it open. Inside wasn't just a letter, it was a dusty, yellowed deed to a plot of land in the industrial district, a worthless strip of marshland my grandfather had bought decades ago. My heart stopped. That marshland was exactly where Harrison had just broken ground for his new billion-dollar Thorne Tech City. He doesn't know, I realised, a hysterical laugh bubbling in my throat. He thinks he bought this land from the city, but he bought it from a shell company that never held the title. I had my weapon, but I couldn't fire it yet. If I came at him now, he'd use his high-priced lawyers to crush me. I had to become someone he couldn't crush. The grind. I moved into a studio apartment that smelled of damp wood and old grease. I had exactly $400 from selling my mother's locket. I spent $300 of it on a second-hand, high-powered laptop and a cracked version of architectural rendering software. For the next 3 months, while my stomach grew and my ankles swelled, I didn't sleep more than 4 hours a night. I lived on instant noodles and tap water. While Harrison was out being photographed at galas with Sienna, I was dissecting his business model. I knew his weaknesses because I had been the one proofreading his speeches for years. Then the contractions started. I gave birth to Ben in a public ward, surrounded by strangers. When the nurse handed him to me, I didn't see bad luck. I saw a boy with my eyes and a chin that looked far too much like the man who had discarded us. "You're going to own this city, Ben," I whispered, kissing his forehead. "And your father is going to be the one to hand you the keys." When Ben turned 1, I finally made my move. I didn't apply for corporate roles as Elena Vance. That name was a lead weight, dragged through the mud by Harrison's PR team until it was synonymous with thief. Instead, I birthed a digital ghost, the Phoenix. I spent my nights in a cramped, flickering kitchen, a sleeping toddler in a bassinet beside me, as I entered international design competitions anonymously. My designs weren't just buildings. They were living ecosystems, self-sustaining, carbon negative, and radically cheaper to build than Harrison's bloated, industrial monstrosities. But the path wasn't a straight line to the top. I faced hurdles that nearly broke me all over again. The first major hurdle was the Silicon Gatekeeper, massive tech conglomerate, attempted to buy one of my urban designs for a pittance, and when I refused, they tried to bury my work under a barrage of copyright strikes and legal threats, assuming a nameless designer had no resources to fight back. I had to spend 3 months' worth of grocery money on an encrypted, high-stakes digital lawyer just to protect my intellectual property. There were weeks when my internet was cut off because I couldn't pay the bill, forcing me to sit in a 24-hour laundromat with Ben, using their spotty free Wi-Fi to upload blueprints that would eventually be worth millions. I remember Ben crying from teething pain while I sat on a hard plastic chair, my fingers flying across a battered keyboard to hit a midnight deadline for a skyscraper design in Dubai. Every access denied, screen and every rejection letter felt like Harrison's hand pushing me back into the mud, but I used that spite as fuel. The second hurdle was the shadow hunt. Harrison, sensing a shift in the market, hired a high-end intelligence firm to track down the Phoenix. For 6 months, I lived like a fugitive. I moved Ben and our meagre belongings between 3 different low-rent apartments, never staying in one place long enough for a digital footprint to settle. I had to learn the dark arts of data, scrubbing and VPN tunneling, while simultaneously drafting the structural supports for a new world. By the time Ben was 3, the Phoenix had become the most sought-after consultant in the world. I was living in a modest, secure house now, shielded by layers of encrypted emails and offshore servers. I funneled every cent I earned, every prize, every consulting fee, every royalty into a private equity fund I named Vance Global. I watched from the shadows as Harrison's empire began to bleed. He was arrogant, a man who believed his own press releases. He thought he was untouchable, so he over-leveraged his assets to a degree that made my skin crawl. He poured every liquid, scent of the Thorne fortune, into Thorne Tech City, a vanity project that was supposed to be his legacy. He had no idea that while he was busy posing for magazine covers with Sienna, I was slowly encircling him. I was buying up the predatory loans he'd taken out to fund his construction. I was snapping up the smaller suppliers he'd bullied into debt. I was creating a legal minefield beneath his feet, and I was just waiting for him to take one more arrogant step. 5 years to the day after the gala, I stood in front of a mirror in a penthouse suite I'd bought under a corporate name. I wasn't the girl in the grey wool dress anymore. My hair was a sharp honey blonde bob. My suit was bespoke silk, the colour of a predator. I looked at Ben, now a sharp-witted 5-year-old sitting on the sofa, playing with a tablet. He was reading a financial report. I hadn't raised a peasant. I had raised a prodigy. Ben, I said, are you ready to go meet the man who thinks he's king? Ben looked up, his eyes cold and intelligent. The man who owes us the building, Mummy. The man who owes us everything, I corrected. The news had just broken. Thorne Industrial was facing a hostile takeover. Their lead investor had pulled out, and a mysterious firm, Vance Global, had quietly bought up 49% of their debt. Harrison Thorne was desperate. He had called an emergency, meeting with the principals of Vance Global to beg for a debt restructuring. He had no idea he was inviting the baggage back into his boardroom. I picked up my briefcase. It wasn't a stolen necklace. It was the original land deed and a 51% stake in his life's work. Let's go, I said. It's time to show them what kind of luck we bring. The glass doors of the Thorne Industrial boardroom slid open with a hiss, a sound that reminded me of a snake in the grass. Only this time I wasn't the prey. Harrison was standing at the head of the table, his back to me, staring out at the city he thought he ruled. He looked older. His hair was thinning, and his suit, once a symbol of untouchable power, now looked like armour on a dying soldier. Sienna was there too, sitting in a chair she didn't own, checking her reflection in a compact. Her career had stalled after a string of flops, and her desperation was a scent I could smell from across the room. You're late, Harrison barked, not turning around. I don't care how much debt you've bought. Vance Global needs to understand that I built this city. You need me. Actually, I said, my voice cutting through the air like a diamond through glass. You built it on my land. I think you are the one who is late. Harrison. Harrison froze. That voice. He turned slowly. His face drained of colour. His eyes travelled from my designer heels to my face, and then down to the small, sharp-eyed boy holding my hand. Elena? He whispered. The name sounded like a curse on his lips. Sienna's compact clattered to the floor. You? Perhaps you were a thief. You were nothing. I was exactly what you made me, I said, walking to the head of the table. I didn't wait for an invitation. I sat in the CEO's chair. Ben sat beside me, opening his tablet with a clinical calm that terrified Harrison. This is a joke, Harrison stammered, a frantic laugh bubbling up. You can't be the head of Vance Global. You're a high school dropout with a... He looked at Ben, then back at me. With a mistake for a son. That mistake, I said, sliding a legal folder across the table. Just signed the papers to freeze your personal accounts. And as for the land Thorne Tower sits on, here is the original deed. My grandfather's deed. Your Thorne Tech City is technically a trespass on my property. Harrison snatched the papers, his hands trembling. I'll fight this. I'll hire the best lawyers in the country. With what money? I asked. Vance Global owns your debt. We called in the loans this morning. You're bankrupt, Harrison. You don't even own the chair you're standing next to. Sienna stood up, her face twisted in rage. You think you've won? You're still just a bitter woman trying to get back at a man who didn't want you. Harrison, do something! Oh, I almost forgot, I said, leaning back. Sienna, I bought your talent agency last month. I found some interesting files in the archives. A CCTV recording from 5 years ago, the night of your birthday gala. Sienna went pale. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. I've already sent it to the press, I continued. The headline reads, The Blue Empress. Fraud, how a failing actress framed an innocent pregnant woman. Your comeback movie. It was cancelled 10 minutes ago. You'll never work in this industry again. Sienna collapsed back into her chair, her golden world turning to ash. Harrison looked at Ben. For a second, a flicker of something, maybe regret, maybe greed, crossed his face. Elena. He's my son. We can work this out. For the boy. He needs a father. We can be a family again. Ben looked up from his tablet. His voice was cold, echoing the tone I had used for 5 long years. My mother says a man who throws away his own blood has no value. You aren't my father. You're just a bad investment. The silence that followed was deafening. Security! I called out. The doors opened, and 2 men in suits entered. They were the same guards who had watched. Harrison threw me out in the rain 5 years ago. Escort Mr. Thorne and Miss Blake out of the building, I commanded. They no longer have clearance to be on this property. Eleanor, wait! Harrison shouted as the guards grabbed his arms. You can't do this! I made you! No, I said, looking him dead in the eye as he was dragged toward the door. You broke me. I'm the one who made myself. As the doors shut on their shouting, the boardroom became quiet. I looked out the window at the skyline. The sun was setting, casting a golden glow over the city. Ben reached out and squeezed my hand. What now, Mommy? I smiled, and for the first time in 5 years it reached my eyes. Now, Ben, we build something that actually belongs to us. The bad luck baby and the poor girl were no longer shadows. We were the sun. And the empire of Harrison Thorne was nothing more than a memory in our rearview mirror. Eleanor's journey proves that the best revenge isn't just winning, it's outgrowing the people who tried to keep you small. Harrison lost his empire because he valued status over loyalty. Elena built a new one because she valued her son over her fear. But now we want to hear from you. 1. The question. If you were Elena, would you have forgiven Harrison for the sake of your son? Or was firing him the only way to get justice? Let us know in the comments below. We read every single one. 2. The challenge. If this story inspired you to never give up, hit that like button and subscribe to our channel. We bring you stories of justice, resilience, and the ultimate comeuppance every day. We'll see you in the next story.